Right, so it's time for Bottom Line tonight. Of course, it is a Monday evening, and we are live here in the studios from our studios here in Rage, Accra. And I am your host, Kwesi Afriye. Tonight, on the Bottom Line, we have a number of things coming up, but it's all about the economy. And the big one is a special interview that we are going to have with one of our very usual guests. We have always had him on Zoom. We are lucky tonight to be having him live here in the studio. So it's a discussion that we are going to have, obviously, on the economy, how the economy is performing, whether it's ailing or it's getting stronger, the interest rates, the banking crisis, the credit ratings, the banking reformations, the exchange rates, the MPC rates, and everything that comes to mind. We'll be talking about it. But all in all, we'll be looking at how we will be able to, all of us, contribute to the growth of the Ghanaian economy. We've heard from the IMF that the blame can be laid squarely at the doorstep of the Russian and Ukrainian war, and of course, the COVID-19 pandemic. However, the management of the economy by the economic managers will be assessing that as well, and the issues of the finance minister keeps coming up. The president has backed him, saying that he is one of the best finance ministers we've had in the country. We will be assessing that as well. So you want to stick and stay with us tonight because it is about the economy. We may end up talking about employment, how to make sure that the young people of Ghana also have employment. So it's a discussion tonight. I'm not sure we'll be able to open up the phone lines. However, we will put our numbers on the screen. We'll put the number on the screen, and right from now, you can begin sending in your messages, and we'll try as much as possible to read. If you have any question at all on the economy, we'll try as much as possible to read them. Remember that we are live on DSTV channel 277. We are live on our Facebook page, Chairman Kwesi Afriye, and of course, Metro TV news page. This is what we have for you tonight. It's going to be exciting. You want to stick and stay with us. We'll be right back. You're welcome back from the break. So all is set for us and now, and let me come to the studio here and introduce to you my guest, Professor Sharif Mahmoud Khalid, and he's an assistant professor in accounting and financial management, University of Sheffield, and we've had him here quite a number of times, but it's always been virtual, and I'm privileged to be welcoming him live here in the studio. Prof, good evening. Thank you very much for joining us.
Good evening, and
I hope you're doing well.
yeah, thanks for having me.
You're welcome. We are happy to have you. How is Ghana treating you?
So far, so good.
So far, so good.
Right. Yeah.
We are happy you are here because we keep having you virtually on Zoom. We are grateful to you all the time that anytime we call on you,
It's a pleasure.
we're able to get to you to analyze the economy for us. For a lot of people, we have the opportunity to learn and listen to how the economy is being managed and whether we're able to follow how our taxes are faring and so on and so forth. So we are going to do that discussion tonight.
Right.
However, I quickly want to go to a statement that was released this morning by the National Communications Authority, NCA, on everybody that hasn't registered their SIM cards yet. Do you know the information that is available? We've had interviews on it this morning. We've looked at the way forward for people that haven't registered and how everybody is going to be sorted out. The political twist to it all have come right from this morning. So I'm just going to read to you the statement and probably a certain analysis of the statement. Then I'll come back here into the studio for the discussion tonight. So it's about SIM card users in Ghana who have not registered their SIM cards. That's what the statement says. Will start facing punitive sanctions from, that is today, the 5th of September, 2022. So according to the document you see on the screen now, which is from the National Communications Authority, the initial punitive measures will include the rerouting of outgoing calls for special messages to be played. So messages about how you have to do your registration will be played to you if you haven't registered from today. Those messages will play before you are able to have your call go through. So some numbers will also be blocked for special messages to be played for 48 hours. And within September, that is this particular month, these measures shall not include the blocking of SMS services to give defaulting subscribers the opportunity to initiate registration if they so wish. Now, subscribers who fully register their SIM cards within the period they have been blocked will only be unblocked by the mobile network operators, MNOs, after 48 hours to avoid the MNOs tampering with their systems intermittently. Now, this is according to the document you are seeing on the screen. And the full blocking of the SIM cards will only begin after the 30th of September. That's after this month. Now, the window for the re-registration of the SIM cards was extended, as we all know, the 31st of July. But a month after the extension, the number of persons who have visited offices, the network service providers to have their SIM cards registered dropped by a whopping 98%. Wow. Now, data from the Ghana Chamber of Telecommunications shows significant drop in the SIM card registration after extension of the exercise. According to the figures, the number of subscribers re-registering the SIM or their SIM cards fell to 5,861 on August 19, 2022, from about 235,000 recorded on the 31st of July 2022 with the extension, or when the extension was announced. That's about 98% decline. And I've given you some of the figures. That by 1st of August 2022, the number of registration had fallen to 62,715 compared to 235,460. Wow. The trend continued until it dropped by August 19 to 5,861. Now, following the public agitations, the Minister of Communication and Digitalization, Mrs. Esla Usu-Akufo, announced an extension of the deadline to September 30th, 2022. Some people had indicated that they were yet to receive their Ghana card, the primary identification system used for the SIM card registration. So government, through the sector minister, has also warned that there will not be any extension as it launches the online portal for registration for Android users. And, so these are the things and the figures. The rest of our story is about the data and the figures and the people that are registering and the sanctions that will be put to you and so on and so forth. But I don't know whether, Prof, you want to make a comment on this. We as a country think that digitization is the way to go to support the economy. So, producer, yes, we can come back to the studio now and we get straight into our discussion. Managers of the economy think that digitization and digitalization is the way to go. And here we are facing this kind of backlash.
Well, it is, but in every society, there are laggards when it comes to technology. And I think that they're probably doing very well now, and they've improved in the stakeholder engagement process. Initially, it sounded very much like a military decree, but I think that they've probably reflected over it because these things take time. And I personally think that even the 30th deadline with all of these modalities put in place, it's still too little too late, and it's not going to be very effective. We're in a society where we're trying to break that gap, as you said, digitalization gap. We're still far from it, right? And the point is, most of us are privileged to be on the digital grid. Let's not just look at everyone else and think that, okay, well, the young man from Bunkruguyoyo or maybe someone at Axim or somewhere also appreciates technology as we do. So it means that there got to be some more engagement in this. So it could probably be a year whole program or run for a couple of years to phase this out. Other than that, I don't see the rush in trying to get...
You don't think the ministry should issue or the national...
No, I think that all of these ultimatum threats, in a way, right, are probably quite needless to say for a country that wants to get most of its people on the grid. Because society has grown beyond all of these hard letters that are being written for the good of the growth of the economy. I think that we should have sober reflections in these things when we are engaging and really having public discourses or policies that we really want to bring everyone on board, as I said. Yeah. Because someone probably does not really appreciate why a SIM should be registered, or maybe a few years ago, I did this, why are you doing this again? For all you know, there are rumors somewhere that the government is probably trying to listen to people's voice, and some are believing it and not wanting to do it. And it could be, so if you don't engage prudently and at length and with depth to really appreciate all of this, and I think that these are quite hard letters that it's 21st century.
People have even raised the issue of access, for example. I mean, having access to these mobile telecommunication centers where you can register. You can go to, like you mentioned, Prugu and so on and so forth, some very remote areas where you don't have even the transportation to go into these offices. So how do you issue?
I mean, if I'm going up top a hill to receive calls or to make calls, how do you expect me to go and register my SIM within this short frame of time? So I think that, yes, they're beginning to change their tone and strategy, but a lot needs to be done.
And even though it's important, do you think we have gotten there yet? That this should be what we should be doing by this time?
Well, I don't see it much of a priority. I don't know what government's priority is with this. You travel, right? You buy SIM cards abroad without ever having to register them, and you use them. So I don't know what the real strategy is. Government have not been able to come forth to say that this is what I'm trying to do. Is it a census? Is it trying to get what is happening? What are we digitizing? We all have the Ghana card now, which we believe is integrating people into businesses, banking transactions, and the likes of that. What has the phone call or the SIM registration got to do with that? I think government, they are the right people to answer that. They may have a legitimate reason, which I don't know, you don't.
Right.
And at this time, we shouldn't be asking these questions. We should have known. That tells you that there is a problem.
Yeah. That's fair enough. But let's get into the hardcore economy. And my very first question to you will be whether you think, as an economist, as a financial expert, the crisis that we are in currently, some people have given various reasons, various definitions, come from various angles. Some people think it is structural, others think it is, like we have just heard, the COVID and so on and so forth, but others also think it's a leadership failure that we have. The crisis, what do you think it is?
I think it's a cocktail of factors, but chief among which is this government has had a false start from day one, right from the word go, as far as the economy is concerned. We've been running an economy on bonds, literally, for close to 7 years. Who does that? What do you expect when you do that? So that's the false start I'm talking about. So if we begin to do all of this, knowing that, okay, well, I take a loan, I'm just going to be as basic as possible.
Right. I mean, most of our viewers are very basic. So
I take a loan. I haven't even started to service the principal. Few months down the line, I go for another loan.
To come and service
the other one. I keep compounding it, right? So it becomes like a compound loan. What happens? You've entangled yourself. It's a rabbit hole of financial crisis. So, and that's what we've been doing in the last 6 to 7 years.
Yes.
Who does that? So we should have been expecting, the bite back has even been slow. It probably took COVID and Russia, Ukraine, as they say, to expose this.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
That, and when I say that the government has had probably
a false start from the beginning,
I'm going to, enumerate a couple of factors.
You have the floor. You have
right. I'm not accusing anyone.
Right.
But you look at the financial infrastructure of the country. Right. There is an inherent risk that probably we're not looking at or discussing. Now you have a finance minister, right, who used to belong to the private sector. He comes into government. I think, a few years in the first tenure. One of his people from the stock of the data bank stock was sitting on the BOG's board, right?
Yes.
The Security and Exchanges Commission, right? You have someone from the data bank stock who sits there, right? The GIPC, right? This is meant to bring in investors into the country from the data bank stock, right? This is an inherent risk in and of itself as far as the nation's financial landscape is concerned. Right.
So I can mention all of these names. I mean, I know all of these people in these places, but I don't think it has really occurred to a lot of people that this is what's happening.
Yeah, this is what it has not occurred. That's why I'm spelling that out to you in studio. So this is an inherent risk in and of itself. Any investor sitting in a hotel lobby in Boston, in London, in Tokyo, right, anywhere in the world, or in a boardroom in Geneva trying to invest in Ghana, right, picking up market intelligence will pick this up. We're not saying they're doing something wrong. Forget about the corporate governance of it, which is another dimension we could talk about. But this, in and of itself, represents an inherent risk. How are we dealing with that? Right? How has the government communicated effectively that they've insulated themselves against this risk? So you see where the false starts are.
In fact, this is the first time my mind is coming to this.
Right. So these are some of the issues that, right from the word go, right? I mean, Ukraine and all of that would come and go, but I don't think fundamentally Russia is functioning effectively.
Yes,
right.
Exactly.
We're even making more excuses than the Ukrainians as far as economy is concerned.
So you believe it's leadership failure?
What I'd say is a cocktail of factors.
Cocktail of,
yeah, and chief among which I've just spelled out to you that these two factors are really very. You're running the country on bonds for the last 6 to 7 years, right? You have an inherent risk, standardized in the face, and no one is talking about that. And the government has not put in measures to insulate themselves against this. So how is that happening? So what's going to happen is this, right? You look at external factors and internal factors.
Yes.
Now, when we talk about external factors, we're probably talking about a retreat of, let's say, foreign direct investments.
Yes.
That have, since 2005, globally, we have not had a retreat of, investors from the EM, that's the emerging markets, to the quantum within which we've had in recent times. And we're talking about a withdrawal of about $30 billion. That's massive.
Yeah.
And Ghana counts among these frontier and emerging markets. Right. So what's going to happen is that an investor can still risk and probably go into war-torn Congo, right, amidst the risks, knowing the profit they'll get. We are a stable democracy.
Yes.
Right. So what they are looking for is some of these inherent risk. And the fleets they are making, for the first time, it's not going to be a short-term one. We think that they're going to return very soon because, the whole global economy is undergoing a phase. And they'll begin to look elsewhere. Now you would see that the way the economy is going, right, we are probably getting to a dysfunctional state. And I say dysfunctional in the sense that treasury bills have always been the safest of investments. But what's happening? Investors are trying to look elsewhere.
Yeah.
They're shying away from treasury bills for the first time in economic history. That never happens. Right. So, as I mentioned to you the last time, you look at central bank reserves. The central banks appear very helpless to an extent. You look at central bank reserves. Possibly ballpark, we're talking about the end of 2001, we're probably talking about $9+ billion, right? By June, we're probably doing 7+. So if you compute this, you run the numbers, you're probably having a depletion of about $1 billion every quarter.
Yeah.
If this continues for 3 quarters, the economy will paralyze.
So my question then is, how do we solve the problem? How do we come back on track? Like you mentioned, the central bank. Central bank raising reserves, trying to raise reserves. MPC, for example, they have had to have an emergency meeting, raise it by about 300 basis points, all in a way to preserve the economy. But we are still seeing, for example, interest rates rising very high. We are still seeing the exchange rates. We are still seeing everything going the same
central
way.
bank is in a firefighting position, and that's what economic crisis hate. When you are in and you start to firefight, the market responds, signal and noise in economic terms. So all of these are going to be factored in. But as you will say, when you talk about homegrown solutions, then we start to use a stick and plaster solution of saying, Article 71 office holders are cutting emoluments. That's so infinitesimal, It doesn't do anything. It's a drop in the ocean for a big economy like ours, right, where we ought to be doing it very well. So as of I've always said or mentioned, can we begin? When we really mean local solution, create a portfolio of local ingredients of what we would bring together as a short-term measure that could have long-term potential, right? To getting all of these things.
Practically, what will you be looking at? Because the last time we spoke about some of the things the Minister of Information had mentioned that they had embarked on, like you are saying, cutting some of the emoluments and even the tax exemptions, reducing some of them and so on and so forth. Some financial experts think, yes, for example, the free zones companies, the type of taxes to give them, and so on and so forth. But what exactly should we be looking at?
No, the point is, I think when we went into the COVID crisis, we went for some money. What did we do with it? It's about time we ask the right questions now, right? Because if we had injected that money into businesses, supported businesses for what they are, that money should begin to have, turn something back into
Returns
the economy or some returns. As of now, we haven't had that. So this is where we have to start to ask the right questions. Very soon, or pretty much soon, we'll be engaging with the IMF, right? If you're following Zambia closely, right, I think they're about getting to final stages of it. And the conditionalities are quite interesting, right? Never in the history of a country, a sovereign state, should an external institution tell you to draw laws in your constitution or whatsoever to have to prove that you would not have reckless management, you would have to have limitations on borrowings and all of that. No country should allow itself, right? No matter how it is, you've got to be stronger. You're a sovereign state. So if we reach that stage, right? And what's going to happen is that the IMF operates on a template. If it goes through in Zambia, the market watchers would know that template will not vary much. It's not going to vary from what we will be having in Ghana. And the market will be quick enough to start to respond. So what it means is that the IMF policy or whatever program that they might agree on might in and of itself be a poison chalice.
Oh.
We don't know the conditionalities, but from what we're observing in Zambia, it's not really looking pretty.
We are hearing that they will be asking government to restructure the free SHS policy, for example, maybe target those who can pay and ask them to pay. And we are seeing signs of the president now accepting or kind of buying into some kind of...
again, when we talk about even the external factors,
right.
This government came to power on the wings of free SHS, 1D, 1F, right? So we have, this is a test case to have 1DNF in full flight proving itself. Now we have investors retreating out of the country. 1DNF should be filling that gap. Is that happening?
There was a question I have put here I was going to ask you. Your assessment of 1D, 1F. And some of us, our worry, they talk about 150 companies as we sit here and speak. But we have the example of Commander Sugar Factory, where the company was set up and there was no raw materials. We can talk about Blue Skies, which is now set up in Brazil, for example. I mean, the large pool of employment it would have created if you had had the opportunity to expand here in Ghana. Yes. But supplies were not coming in from the farmers and so on and so forth. We are having these companies, most of which are fruit juice producing companies. How are we going to be able to supply? Have we thought about the value chain and so on and so forth to buttress the economy?
The point is, I think that we always have this laissez-faire attitude towards farming. We treat it as though it's a cheap venture. Farming is very expensive. It's capital intensive. But the attitude of government has always been that, oh, let's go into farming, planting for food and jobs and all of that. But that's a very expensive venture.
Right.
So how have we supported a local farmer to integrate into that value chain you're talking about to providing those, those mangoes have standards to meet by the EU and the likes of that. So how well trained is the farmer? What are the incentives within the economy? These are the basics that we need to get right before we even start to talk about planting for food and jobs. Right? It's not just having a backyard garden that's enough. And from what we're doing and seeing now, that's what it is. Or it's not a minister walking to the market square to pick a bunch of plantain and say it costs now 5. That's not the debate. The debate goes beyond that.
I spoke to an expert today who believes that if we don't go back to agric, I mean, right before 2007, agric was contributing very well to the economic growth. We saw oil and everything now went onto oil. If we don't go back to agric and look at the basics of building an economy, from agric to industrialization, even before we get to service, we may never get to where we want to get to. We may never be able to develop the economy.
I think that we've had good ideas on paper. It's just implementation and the politics of it. And that's what I always come to. We talk about NAPCO. There's an agric module as part of it. What have they done? What have they learned? What were their roles? Which farms were they taking to? Blue Skies have an expertise in chopping mangoes, shipping them out into leading supermarkets like Waitrose, Asst, Tesco's, and the likes of that. So have we had any linkages or governments? So when the whole NAPCO idea came up, I also have the view that why don't we house NAPCO within our university campuses, right? To have business research incubating centers, right? The universities take responsibility. So we are giving our universities a task, which they can't afford to fail. Right, so by then we're churning out the numbers. We could easily check which is getting right. But we usually make, political slogans out of these things.
We have recruited 100,000 people into NAPCO.
Into NAPCO, and then we've paid them allowances. But, the danger, the ripple effect of some of this that nobody mentions is that, when you take them through this program, you satisfy them with an allowance for a while, like a year or two, which is a bit stable for some people, but not all people. Now there's nothing to come. That's more dangerous than never, ever even giving them. Right? So you want to cure a social vice. This might increase a social vice. And that might come back to bite the economy even more than that investment you've gone in. So there's a social cost to some of these short-termism attitudes that we bring into our political space in the name of trying to get all of this done. I mean, as I said, this is the most lucky government in the history of Ghana, right? Very media friendly.
Yes.
And again, when we go to the issues of e-levy, which I know you become into your best
of course.
Your best, because I mean, when we got to the stages of e-levy, if the government at this initial stage,
we can just go to it. I mean, it's
I know you love that.
Yeah, I love it.
If the government had eaten humble pie,
yeah,
and said, look, Ghanaians, our anticipations were wrong. We got it wrong, and we did this right. can we have this percentage in and see how we can all grow the economy together? Trust me, the people of Ghana would have given them the chance.
Because the promise was that with e-levy, we will never go to IMF.
But we
Currently, are
started,
standing before IMF.
battling MPs, flying in MPs, right? That was very rude, and it didn't help the entire process.
But do you think the posture of government and how government went about the whole thing, communication through the media, for example, everything,
stakeholder engagement, money spent on that as well,
has affected?
That's what affected it the most.
Less than 7% of the target.
Let's engage the people of Ghana. We all want to have a decent economy. You get me? And now, with all of the noise that came up, with not wanting to go to the IMF, we're back to the IMF table. We're going there very short change because we made, utterances that were not. So that's just why I'm of the view that the finance minister and his team have no business at the IMF table, right? Because they're already on a weak position.
Yes, exactly.
Right? They need to choose a strong team that would go in. Because they listened to all of what they said. So now what are you coming to tell us?
We've seen pictures of the IMF people and the finance ministry. And just yesterday, once we were talking about e-levy and the IMF again, let me bring back the video of the IMF lady who said that the economic management problem cannot really be laid at the feet of mismanagement, so to speak. But of course, the Ukraine. But let's watch that video if we have the bite. Okay, so I'm looking for that video, but what we are seeing currently on the screen is His Excellency the President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo and the lady from IMF. I'm having a closed-door meeting. I think this happened before she met the finance minister, and this before she made the statement. Okay, so this actually happened today. This is a meeting that happened today. We'll have this. And then if we have the video where she was speaking right after that, okay, that's it. Let's have this video now.
Us to indeed reach an agreement by the end of this year. We started very constructive discussions already. And to the people of Ghana, like everybody on this planet, you have been hurt by exogenous shocks. First the pandemic, then Russia's war in Ukraine. And that we need to realize is not because of bad policies in the country, but because of this combination of shocks. And therefore, we have to support Ghana because you're a member, you're a strong country, you have fantastic people, but also we have to support Ghana because your strength contributes to the strength of your neighbors. It contributes to a stronger world.
We asked for 1.5 billion initially. Now they're asking for 3 billion. Will we get it?
Let's go through the discussions and then we will know.
Well, so we asked for, they're asking for 3 billion. I should say, let's go to the discussions and then we will know. We were discussing, we had spoken about e-levy, and now we are at the table. And you are on a very strong point. The Minister of Finance shouldn't be at the table. And his team, of course, will need a stronger team.
If I'm an IMF wank
Yes.
or a chap with the IMF and I'm going to the negotiations, I look up Kenneth Oriata and I realize that, look, here's a man who specializes, who's run an economy on bonds in the last 6 years.
That I agree. I mean, we have followed
in the last 6 years,
Yes.
I'll be smiling to the table because I know he doesn't have strength in negotiations when it comes to dealing with IMF loans and concessions, right? So that's a very weak point or position you're going with already, right? So they've made utterances. We are a sovereign nation. We're never going to go to the IMF. I wouldn't sit here and say the IMF is a bad institution, right? I mean, we've had her.
But the conditionalities that will come with
it's
it.
what it is. Sometimes, as I said, it may end up being a poison chalice, depending on the conditionalities. And as I said, Zambia should be where to watch closely and see what template is being left there and see what tweaks they would be making to fit that of Ghana. And as it stands now, I've always told you, e-levy, right, as it stands now, is the single...
Should it be scrapped?
Well, where it's gotten to now is bringing something in, right? I wouldn't say it should be scrapped. If it can be restructured, communicated properly, but they have the expertise to do that. Or if they will hire me to do that, I'm ready to give them that service at a fee.
All right. I mean, you are an international expert. You deal in the global economy.
Yeah,
so
if...
You should be able to.
Yeah, so, but I think that it could be restructured,
Yes,
right?
yes.
We have to re-engage the people. But I don't know how much good faith they still have, right? I think
With the
Ghanaians have
people.
really been patient with this government. And I don't think any government would have enjoyed goodwill from the good people of Ghana to the extent to which...
issues of this sort.
So what I was saying in terms of the IMF
Yes.
negotiations, that we're going to, with a very weak hand, if we look whoever. So I think that that's one thing we really need to look at. 3 billion,
Are they going to
we
get
probably
it?
need 4 to 5 billion to really get the economy stable.
We
The 3 billion may do something,
Yes.
but
We should get 4 to 5 billion
yeah, we need about 4 to 5.
to be able to salvage the economy. Well, okay. So we're having discussions with our very own prof. Today he's in Ghana, and we are taking our time to run through some of the things that have come up. I'll come to Professor Steve Hankey's some of the statements that he's made, but I would like to go on a quick break. When I come back, we'll look at the Afrexim loan, which is coming in, how it can help to stabilize the economy. And once we are talking about IMF and the inflows that are coming, we'll look at that loan as well. And then maybe the expected syndicated loan from COCOBOD, how that will also come and push the economy. And of course, we'll go to Professor Steve Hankey. You want to stick and stay with us. If you have any message, please send them through. At the end of the show, I'll try as much as possible to read them. Stay with us. You're welcome back from the break. We're still here in the studio with Professor Sharif Mahmoud Khalid from University of Sheffield, here with us in the studio tonight. I promised you that I'm going to come back to the loans that are coming in and how they are going to support the economy, because we are talking about the IMF and the inflows. This one is a very long one, so I'll jump. I'll read just about 2 or 3 messages that have come in, too many of them coming in, and then I'll come back to my professor here in the studio. This one says, "Good evening, sir. Please let the government know that the SIM registration issues will only reduce his e-levy projections down, because a lot of people would stop using their SIM as a result of the punitive measures he introduced." Wow. Good evening, host. All that Dr. Khalid is saying, which you say never occurred to you, has been repeated over and over by Honorable Dr. Adungu, but nobody, including the media, were just hypocritical about it. So we know the problems and we know the solutions as well. So Prof here is very much watching or listening to it and laughing. But I am saying this is the first time my mind is really being averted to it. I may have heard it, but not put my mind to it very critically. But of course, it's important to follow and be able to do proper assessments for our mother Ghana. The guy is an icon, so our standards are weak as he's structured. Truly, the intensity of farming we turn down by government is worrying. Kalim Binbok sent in that one. This one says, "Good evening, Akwesi. Nana Akuamwa Boatin Ablekuma Central sent in that one. I strongly disagree with your guest about he not seeing the reason why the Communications Ministry is giving a deadline for re-registration of SIM cards. Is he not aware of various scams some faceless individuals use to perpetuate financial crimes? For his information, that is the very basis why we are re-registering our SIM cards. Your guests, no, I'll jump this one. The IMF never made mention of economic mismanagement. We are where we are because of the twin disasters, COVID and Russia-Ukraine, which IMF has affirmed his position, or this position, you say. Nana Ekuamwa Boatin Ablekuma Central sent in that one. Hello, good evening. I'm so excited seeing smart and intelligent Dr. Sharif Khalid in your studio today. Keep doing an amazing job, and may the good Lord continue to bless and protect you always. Hassan Sumbura from Upper West Region. Yes, Hassan, we appreciate that, but we want you to speak to the issues that we are discussing. Either agree or disagree. People are sending in messages. We appreciate you watching and the blessings very much. But hello, good evening. Okay, so I've read that one already. Dr. Sharif, you're really making Upper West proud. This is Honorable DA from DAI. Honorable DAI. Okay, so thank you very much. Good evening. I'm Benjamin from Kwashima. I think why Ghanaians are patient with the Kufuor's administration is that tribalism and hypocrisy, that's what is killing Ghanaians. If it were to be either NDC or a I will jump this one, president, you would have seen something terrible happening in the country. He's a very intelligent person. The NDC need to bring him on board from CETA. We are discussing the situation in Ghana dispassionately. We are not doing politics. So those of you sending very political messages, I will read, but please try and make sure it has reference to the economic discussions we're doing here. We're all making sure that the country will grow. Let me come back to Afrexim loan, $750 million already in the country. How is it going to impact on the economy?
Well, I don't have hopes in the loans anymore. Right?
You don't have hopes in the loans?
Yeah, because the point is, what we're doing is, what are we going to do with these loans? What have been earmarked to engage? So what it means is that some of these loans coming in are going to pay off principals and interest. Mm-hmm. So it still leaves us at the same position, right? Or would bring in, some stability of the currency, which will be short-lived, right? So you borrowing to sort of like, how shall I put it? I'm trying to get a term that is as soft as possible and not to get so harsh on it. But you borrowing to actually soften the situation. It doesn't work that way. It's not a solution. So that's another debt in the face. So how do we keep going this? So it's like the economy is a rabbit hole.
We are expecting syndicated loan, 1.3.
Yet another loan, right? And how is the loan
and
going
it's supposed to impact on the exchange rate.
But how is it going to be invested into the economy? What have been earmarked? Ghana Gas, right, it's an investment project. What's it bringing back into the economy, right? So these are some of the, investments we talk about, right? So this is a clear example we have to ask ourselves, okay, we invested in Ghana Gas. What is it bringing back? What's the examples of this? So these loans coming in, what are we doing with them? Are they just coming in to stabilize currency, right? What projects are they going in? Are they part of the 1D, 1F scheme? Right? Are they going into the agricultural projects that we're talking about? Is it farming to, what's the initiative again?
So we should
food planting for food and jobs, right?
The point is that we should have specific programs earmarked for the money that we are seeing.
That would have a good return on investment. And I said, 1D, 1F, right? Let's look at the life cycle of a project in terms of a factory. Within 5 years, it should be bringing back some returns. How many years today since 1D, NF took off?
6 years now.
6 years. What are we getting in terms of return? In terms of investments, we don't have the numbers. Why is government not giving us that? For us, because if I don't have the numbers, I can engage with that to say that, okay, well, X have gone into in employment, but we brought in NAPCO, right? NAPCO had a healthcare module and all of these. How was the Ministry of Health integrated into this, right? What was the delivery process? Health is a complex thing. Is it the administrative aspect? Is it the clinical aspect? So these things were obviously not thought through properly. They are good initiatives. If they went in right, probably we'll be having results today.
But
what skill have we equipped, right? NAPCO graduates with that would make them different. They are a special breed. When I say a special breed, they had an opportunity,
exactly,
right, to be employed or engaged for a year. So what skills have they been left with, right, that could propel them or spare them onto the next economic level? So these are some of the engagements we should be having. I think that it's about time we stop the threat of the ballot. It's about time we stop the slogans. It's about time and then really engage properly with these things and have a passionate engagement as far as these things are concerned.
So, of course, when we talk about economic crisis, we talk about rising inflation and of course, unemployment as well. So once you talk about...
Again, one important point. You realize all these special initiatives, check. Where's the funding? There's no funding, right? So all of this crisis we are in, you could say IMF have not quoted to say that it's mismanagement, that they're coming to the negotiation table. They're not coming to give us freebies.
Yes.
Right? So they are being prudent. We were not prudent. Our ministers were not prudent in utterances. The IMF is being prudent, trying to solidify its base and get itself right.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's, it's putting its ducks in a row to come in and for a good negotiation, not to have a weaker power. So we can't be quoting the IMF and saying because they're not coming to give us free money.
All of this should be towards economic growth,
Yep.
creation of employment. Let me ask you what you make of government's employment creation agenda. The president has spoken about the 1 million jobs agenda by the end of 2024.
Yep.
Now we have seen NEIP embarking on entrepreneurship activities, Ghana Enterprises Agency saying, and then we are seeing Obatampa Ghana Cares Program came up, and then now You Start, which is to be championed by the NEIP and the Ghana Enterprises Agency. We see Youth Employment Agency, a number of them, all towards the 1 million jobs agenda. Are we moving anywhere?
Well, I can get the strategy with which government is coming at this, right? I mean, if you start a business, right, let's say you have a group of companies with subsidiaries and the likes of that, definitely some are going to fail and some will be successful. So probably they are not trying to consolidate it in one go. But then again, you find similarities within this, right? So what's the sustainability of these programs? You look at them, you don't know. What's the source of funding? You look at it, you don't know. So what happens is that we dip into government kitty, put X here. If Y is not working, we dip again into the government kitty and put what. So, but what kind of investments are we putting in the long to short or medium term that could pay off themselves? This is what we should be looking at, right? Because you look at the banking crisis, right? These are all factors that have probably culminated, as we said. I started off by saying that it's a cocktail of factors.
Yes,
so that amalgamation of factors that came in.
Yes.
You look at the banking crisis, right? In economic or finance terms, we have what is known as SIFE institutions, right? These are strategically important financial institutions. And by that, we mean that they are too big to fail.
Yes.
Their being too big to fail is that, their sheets or balance sheets would hold, mortgages, loans, employ a lot of people. So in such cases, the most prudent of measures is to support them, not to let them sink. Right? We sank them at a cost that we still can explain to this day.
Some experts believe that those banks that were sunk were not too big to fail, and so there needed to be a very strong signal.
Well, they should bring that out they should bring that out for us to discuss. Why were they not? We ran the cost-benefit analysis of allowing Bank Y to run for the next 2 years by injecting maybe capitalization of B, right? How would that have happened? If they had run these scenario analysis and shared it with the general public and said, look, which is why we're going to do this. It's communication, it's engagement.
You think the banks shouldn't have been consolidated?
I'm not saying they shouldn't. They haven't given enough reason why they should be, except the passage of, they're not doing very well. But we needed to break it down to say, okay, well, if we inject X as capitalization from the government side of things into this bank or into Bank Y, it wouldn't do well in the next 5 years or in the next 2 to 3 years, which is why we are doing this, right? There are banks that are surviving. If you probably look at, there are a lot of issues. Banking is a very complex business, right? Sometimes you want to collapse a bank and the loans it holds on its portfolio might even make you not. Or if you are probably having a measure or what have you. So there are different issues that we ought to have looked at and then communicate properly to the stakeholders who are Ghanaians.
I'm interested in that because even after the restructuring of the banking sector, we've had just recently, I think Fitch or one of the ratings agencies
downgraded a few banks.
Downgrade 3 major banks.
Yes.
Down. Yeah. And that's a big blow to the banking setup.
A bank may not be doing well profit-wise, right? But could have very good loans on its books.
Yes.
Right? So it takes a lot, right? Banking is quite nuanced. It takes a lot to go into their books and really understand what they're doing, right? Not posting profits. Again, we look at state institutions. How many are posting profits? How much are we pumping in? Right? But they are generating, IGFs and the likes of that, right? So all of these are among the local portfolios that I mentioned to you that we need to really look at. The road fund, the GET fund, what is happening is what? They are tied to, VAT, which is law, right?
Yes.
Yet, on annual basis, they have to go for bonds before they'll be able to pay out their contractors, suppliers, and the likes of that. Why is that happening? Why is that direct, dedicated pipeline of a resource that is meant to go into these funds, where has it been diverted to? So these are fundamental questions. I think that the activists in the average Ghanaian should begin to test some of these things in our law courts to really streamline it.
Let me ask you this very important one. Of course, we've spoken about the loans that are coming in, its impact, for example, on the dollar rate. How do you think we should be able to manage, of course, the reasons of COVID, the reasons of Ukraine-Russian war, the reasons of our economic structure have come up, but the city keeps still going. And you cited the example of Russia even benefiting.
Yeah.
So how are we here crying?
No, but that's what I'm saying. This is where we can test the policies of the government. 1D, 1F, right? Planting for jobs and food. So if grains are a problem, right? Planting for jobs and food should be producing enough grains as of now, given when it started off and the monies that we're voting into rate and the dedication. So if the government policies are failing to reflect that or step in, because other economies are struggling as well. You look at Brazil, South Africa, but they've actually put investor confidence through local initiatives. What have we done differently? We can. If we begin to, create that, as I said, local portfolio of bringing in tangible ingredients where they are measurable, you could look at them and say, okay, well, within the next 1 year, we may have returns on this. You talk about farming and its value chain fundamentally, right? I think we make a joke of agriculture in this country. We need to be focused, right? You look at the likes of blue skies that, as you said, are migrating to other economies to see how, because there's a support system and infrastructure, right? What irrigation schemes do we have? So if probably taking IMF concession and say, okay, well, we're probably going to have 1,000 irrigation schemes dotted around the country. I think that may bring in something.
One village, one dam.
Yeah. Again, so all of the government policies, and this is me not sounding political, but to say the web, of government policies of 1D, 1F as it's been drawn, I've always said that it was massive and it might be the very web that would consume this government if care is not taken. Okay. Right. And nobody tend to question the source of funding when it comes. I talked passionately about free SHS.
Yes.
Right. You talk about free SHS and the quality, right? And I've always challenged the media, and nobody picks this challenge up. Run a research, all right? Or an investigative research to see how many ministers and government appointees have their kids within the free SHS system. And for me to have a policy, right, that you as a flagship policy, you have to have confidence in it.
And having the ministers' kids
in it shows that there is confidence in it. So where's the quality? Right. And I'd give you classic examples. How competitive is our current education? Right. So it's not about it being free. It's about the quality of it. Right. So these days you even get confused with all these track systems as to what is actually happening.
Would you be okay if the IMF says we should scrap it?
Where it's gotten to, I wouldn't say, because people are benefiting from it. Right. Scrap it would be harsh. Can we have a postmortem of it? It's run for a while. Let's have a postmortem and see how it's going. Then we can restructure it, not scrap it.
So, unfortunately, my time is up.
Yeah, so what I say is you can make two routes, right? So run a needs assessment of those that can afford. Those that can afford, they pay. Those that cannot afford, it's like a government scholarship scheme, sort of. You let them go for free.
I'm having too many requests to bring you back. How long are you here in Ghana?
Right. I'll let you know off air.
So right. Unfortunately, our time is up, but kindly pardon me, allow me to pick at least 2 or 3 messages. Yeah. This one says, good evening. Your guest has hit the major reasons why we are where we are. The president himself never loved Ghana before he came into power. He has lied throughout before power, and the reality is governance is not about bragging, big English and lies. Your guest is on point, loving his submission. I agree with him 100%. This is coming from Nimanche, inside Dansoman. 3 folds of problem: COVID, Russia, Ukraine, and mismanagement of the economy. Perhaps in any decent country, finance minister should resign. Doctor, keep it up. Allah bless you. Hi, proud listening to my good friend on the economy, Michael Wipiba, sent in that one. IMF will praise you into thinking that you are doing a good job. The reality will dawn when negotiations and conditionalities hit them in the face. Salam Kasalgu says, we have economic Maguire, who captains the side to economic grave. How did we get here? Dr. Baumia and Ken Ofriata have flooded the forex markets and borrowed dollars. The city appreciates marginally, temporarily, and they get the rented media to call it magic. Ghana has really fallen deep. As a nation, we fail to secure more loans. If we fail to secure more loans, we are doomed. Your message is very long. I'll cut it at that point. Great program, Metro TV. Please tell your guest that we have Ghana's pampered party in government, so they can mess up and get away with it. Wow. The economy is in shambles. Patrick Elembele sent in that one. Your guest, the young professor, is really on top of issues. I totally would agree with all his submissions. AJ Bugli in WA sent in that one. If Ghana is going to IMF, then E-levy should be abolished. Even you, the media, are quiet about this. They said if we take e-levy, no IMF, and now we are going to IMF. So why is e-levy still in operation? Yet you, the media, are quiet looking at this government. But if it were to be another leader, Ghana would have gone into another thing. Benjamin Kwashiman sent in that one. Too many messages coming up, but let me acknowledge you all. My time is up. Pius Kwame, Fiakuna, Ejaya, North Kanishi, Stephen Wa, too many of you, Abdul, Khalik, Baba Osman. Please forgive me. Next week I'll try as much as possible to read every message that comes in.